Now in goes our camshaft. I think we might have a look at these timing marks really quickly. Now, most engines use number 1 top dead centre. That's where the piston is right up the top of the cylinder and the connecting rod is absolutely central in a line with the piston itself. So they call that top dead centre. So that's like a universal reference mark. You'll find most engines are the same. Now you probably won't see it despite my best efforts, but there is a T index there on that. That's probably part of the CDI system. Judging by its location, the flywheel is on the other side of the engine, which is also a common place to put timing indexes. Because they're all bolted to the crankshaft. So we've got the engine at top dead centre, and that as a reference point allows us to then time the camshafts. Now the camshafts have indexes of their own as well, little alignment marks. Now if you have a look here, you can see that there is a notch on the end of the camshaft. There's also one on the inlet camshaft, and they should be facing each other. To reinforce that, I'm sorry about the crummy lighting, this is we're actually getting a new camera soon. You can see a line there as well on the exhaust cam. Now that line, when you sight down the head, will be level with this face here. So if you look down there, you can actually see this line up. And the inlet cam has one of these as well. So you've actually got 2 reference marks. Now I can see that this camshaft needs to be rotated slightly. And we've got to make sure, of course, that it meshes properly with the camshaft drive sprocket. So I'm guessing that that's where that should go. And I'll move the camera out of the way and I'll confirm that by looking down it. But these 2 guys here should point towards each other and be level with the top of the head. And you've got that mark there, which you'll be able to see as level down there, and the same on the other side. Get your valve timing right, folks. If you get it dramatically wrong, it's bad. If you get it really, really wrong, it gets expensive. Now, with our camshaft back in position, and hopefully correct, we need to put the caps back on him. I would say starting with this one on number 2, because it actually has a locating, like a thrust washer arrangement there to stop the camshaft from floating around. I'm just going to give everything a good smear of oil, all the bearings anyway. Now bearings definitely have to go together clean. Okay, that's one. trouble with the camshafts is that it doesn't matter at what position, there will always be a valve event waiting to happen or in the process of happening. So in this instance, we have these guys coming up, actually opposite rotation I think on this guy, so these guys are just getting ready to exit. So the valves are closing on that one. On number 4 they're about to open. Okay, so you can see putting the big cap on the number 2 is effectively located our camshaft for us. They're going back into the place that they came off and facing the correct way. This guy here is not hard to get the orientation correct on. You'll only go on one way. With the other caps, there's actually writing just there, and that seems to go towards the spark plugs. If you put the caps in backwards, you can imagine when these things are made, they're actually a line board. To make sure they're 100% square and round. So if you put them in backwards or something, your bearing's not going to be quite the right shape. Oh, I really have to clean up here. See if I can find a socket. Okay, so we can stop looking now. I found one. Now what's happening here, of course, is that the camshaft is working the valves. Remember I was saying that there's always a valve event happening? So we're just tightening one cap, and that's going to draw the camshaft down onto the valves. We're being very gentle. I mean, the only resistance I can feel there is the resistance that would be caused by the valves. Just giving these a tap down. You remember how well aligned they were and how difficult they were to take off? Well, they weren't difficult, but they certainly were well aligned. And that makes them also somewhat interesting to put back on. Now we certainly don't want to damage anything. So a few well-placed taps and let the thing align itself is actually not a bad strategy. When things align tightly, screwing them down with the thread can be quite harmful. If you don't go down square on it, it can get quite interesting. So you need to just mind the gap there and make sure that these caps are pulled down evenly. Some of them are quite awkward to reach. Patience, don't force anything. It'll work out. so that's that cap nipped up. Oops. That one. Now by nipped up I mean that it's just gone hard. A fraction of a turn and it would be finger tight. See that? Inconveniently placed clutch cable at this time. Okay. We're just going to have a quick look to make sure that the valve timing is correct, because once you tighten that camshaft down, the cam timing can appear to change. And we're just going to rotate it gently. That was 2 full revolutions or 1 cycle. Okay, so we've given it a few revolutions. Turned it over a few times and it looks good. The final step is to torque these caps down, bearing caps. 12 foot-pounds or 16 Newton meters. Now that's not incredibly tight. If in doubt, use a torque wrench. Honestly. Wow, it's a noisy place today, isn't it? Lousy trucks. Okay. Now, it's a good idea to check your valve timing once again. So once again, we're at the top dead center mark on the pointer on the crankshaft. Now, I'm hoping you guys can see this, but there's our 2 alignment marks. They're pointing inwards this time, and they are pointing at each other and level with the rocker cover gasket face. And our 2 camshafts, the pointers there, are in opposite directions. Now, they can be either there or there, depending on what stage of, what part of the cycle the engine's at. You've got to remember that your camshafts spin at 50% of the speed of the crankshaft. Effectively it's 2 to 1. So 1 rotation of the crankshaft of the engine itself would actually put that pointer over there. Clear as mud? I think you might be able to see them a bit better now. Anyway, there's your marks. Now we're going to go through and we're going to check our valve clearances now that we've adjusted them. As soon as we can find an appropriate feeler gauge, 0.8, 9, 10. There's 0.15. That's fairly close to our mark. Same as before, get your cam lobes facing exactly opposite. Oh. Okay, that one's a bit tight. Despite our best efforts, sometimes they may not be as perfect as we would like. Guys, it only costs you time to take these out and do them again. That one is just tight, but I'm guessing it's supposed to be 0.16. It feels about 0.15. So I'm going to live with that. Having said that, whole guys, it just takes time. Nice. Nice. A little tight on this one. That one would be dead on spec. Oh. Get the impression I've done this before. And the final two. Nice. Nice. Awesome. So that's our valve clearances adjusted. Now, the one last thing we need to deal with is our little oil distribution bar. Make sure that the O-rings are in the right place. Now, what did I forget? But that's easily fixed. There. Overall, not a bad result on those valve clearances. Some of them felt absolutely beautiful. The ones that didn't feel so beautiful were a bit on the loose side. But when I say a bit, we're talking about a fraction. You know, they might have been 0.18 or something like that. And you do recall that we decided to go loose rather than tight. go, tricky devil, that one. That distribution pipe doesn't need to be particularly overwhelmingly tight. Since we're here, double check our handiwork. That doesn't mean over tighten everything, by the way. Let's just put some more on that one. Beautiful. And the only thing I've got in my container now is the rocker cover bolt and the breather pipe. Now, where do we go from here? I'm thinking it might be a good idea to put power to the bike.